Well, this episode is a lot like that, lots of canine creatures running on two legs through the woods, ready to slice you up if you don't run fast enough. Yes, today, I've got some new and allegedly true encounters with werewolves that will make your skin crawl and your doggos tingle now. Let's begin. I was 22 when this happened for the past 5 or 6 years. I've only had 2 friends who have stuck with me through everything. We live within 5 minutes of each other in a rural area in Southwest Ohio, specifically in the hills of the Ohio River Valley. For anonymity's sake, I'll be G. My 2 friends are W and A, and my brother will be RA, and are our next-door neighbors. They both live on decently sized plots of land that they don't actually own. There's lots of farmland and thick forest. Behind W's house is a couple of small ponds. We used to fish in his house. Was pretty small and not in the best condition, and I lived in a medium-sized brick house. We'd usually go to W's house to hang out during the summer, since his parents were always at camp, and A's house, or my house, during the other seasons. This is somewhat relevant, but mostly for setup. Now we all love guns. So when I called and told me he bought a new AR-15, I knew we were going to end up shooting before the day was over. I grabbed my SKS paratrooper carbine and Glock 19, and I grabbed his AK-47 and his SIG P-230. We got in my Jeep and drove to A's house. It was still early, about 3 in the afternoon. Less than 5 minutes after we pulled in, a black Chevy Impala pulled into the driveway, heralding W's arrival. He brought his AR-15 and a Beretta M9. We shot for a couple of hours, just taking pot shots at a wooden target I had built in his backyard. We ended up burning through a pretty big chunk of ammo. At that point, I decided I wanted to get something to drink. So I get into my Jeep and drove about 10 minutes away to the closest gas station. After getting to the station and getting a few cans of the nectar of the gods, by which I of course mean Monster, I headed back to A's house. When I came back, I saw W, A, and are standing by the door at the side of the house. A had a look of unease on his face. I exited the Jeep and walked over, asking what was going on. We heard some weird sounds in the woods a few minutes ago, W told me. I asked him what exactly he was talking about and what he meant by weird sounds. I began to explain. We heard some sort of loud vocalization that sounded like a mix between a coyote's yelping and a howl. None of us had any idea what it could have been, so we decided to forget about it. We went inside and played some games. After a few hours, I was bored and began browsing for Chan on my phone, and I lost track of time, but it was getting pretty late. W had walked outside to smoke a cigarette. I was in the bathroom, and R's girlfriend came and picked him up. Then A's dogs began to bark all of a sudden. This startled me. That's when I heard W come back inside the house rather quickly. I asked what was going on, and if something was wrong, step outside, check for yourself. He told me. I stepped outside, curious about what the dogs were barking at, and the second I opened the door, the smell hit me. It was the worst smell I've ever smelled in my entire life. Imagine the scent of a wet dog, the reek of a dead deer rotting in the sun, and the smell of a landfill. Combine those together, and you've got what I can best describe it as repulsed by the smell. I went back inside, telling W. I can see why he came in so quickly. The dogs were still barking, and they seemed to be getting more aggressive. I finally came out of the bathroom, wondering what the commotion was about. W explained the smell, and they seemed more curious than anything. He was also angry about the prospect of someone trespassing. He grabbed his guns and walked outside to look around. He told us to stay inside until he got back, not thinking much of it. I was startled when I heard the sound of a dog yelping, followed by 5 gunshots in rapid succession. A couple of minutes later, I busted through the door yelling, "Get your guns," he said in a panicked voice. Some dude in a ghillie suit just killed one of the dogs. We grabbed our guns and followed him outside, staying close the entire time. Sure enough, in the backyard, we found one of the dogs dead. His throat had been torn up. This wasn't a small dog either. It was a rather large poodle mix of some kind, and I mean one of the really big ones. Close by, we saw the other dog cowering in his house. The cows in the pasture on the other side of the road were mooing, as if they were both afraid and agitated. I asked A to explain what was going on, and he told me I was on the other side of the barn when I heard the dog yelping. When I rounded the corner, I saw this figure that looked like a big guy in a ghillie suit running towards the woods. I shot at him, hoping to hit his leg and incapacitate him or something, but I know I didn't hit him. The same smell I described earlier was still hanging in the air, but it was faint. W and A had flashlights on their rifles, and I had one on my pistol. I slung my SKS over my back and drew my pistol, and we fanned out, looking around the area. I wasn't expecting to find anything. I could see W heading to the other edge of the property, and A was moving towards the cow pasture. I headed back towards the barn, and as I started to step in, I lit a cigarette. I felt raindrops starting to hit me, so I stepped under the barn to smoke. I stood there for less than a minute, when I heard another gunshot. This one came from the direction W had gone, and I began to walk that way, and I saw heading that way too. While we were making our way over, W fired off 3 more shots. What the heck are you shooting at? I asked. I saw that dude, but W's voice was shaky and hushed. It didn't look like a guy. W took a heavy gulp and continued to explain. It looked like a big dog or a wolf. I could clearly see its muscle and ears. I just saw it standing behind some bushes, but it had to have been standing on 2 legs. He stopped and pulled out a cigarette, his hand shaking but still managing to light the thing. I sized it up using a nearby tree, and it had to have been over 6 feet at least. What are you even talking about? I asked. I chimed in. There aren't any wolves nearby, and coyotes don't get that big. You think a coyote would have the guts to come up and rip my dog's throat out? We've got to be dealing with some pelt-wearing hermit strung out on something. The tree that W was talking about was about 350 feet away. So we all walked over to check it out. The rain started to pick up, and the wind was getting strong as well. The clap of thunder put us all on edge. Sure enough, once we reached the tree, a large maple, the branch he used to determine the size was close to 8 feet off the ground by our estimate. We decided to put the other dog into the garage to keep it safe from whoever or whatever was messing with us. This dog was inside a small kennel. But if you live in a rural area, a junkie always finds a way to break into places. They aren't wanted. A unlocked the kennel. The dog followed A to the garage and went inside. Then A locked the door, and we ran back inside the house. So, should we just leave? We can just crash at G's house until morning, W said. I reminded him that R and his girlfriend were there. His face instantly shifted to that of disgust. We all hated R's girlfriend because she wasn't very nice. None of us wanted to deal with her at the time, so we unanimously decided to just hunker down with our guns and stay awake in shifts. It was past midnight at that point, and I volunteered to take the first shift from midnight to 2 a.m. Wanda soon passed out, and I sat there watching out the window. I became bored after a while, my adrenaline from earlier wearing off. I reached into my backpack and pulled out. He finally crafted Gurkha cigar. I stepped out onto the back porch, lit my stogie, and began to smoke and unwind. I had been standing there for about 10 minutes when I heard the cows beginning to make a lot of noise again, and I could hear the other dog barking aggressively inside the garage. Once more I was on edge. I set my cigar in the ashtray, and I unslung my rifle, holding it with the safety off. I made sure not to stray too far off out of the porch light, but I got far enough into the field to see movement in the tree line. I couldn't see what it was, but in a gap in the trees and undergrowth, I saw a quick flash of a gray figure. I began feeling very uneasy, so I started backing into the house. I could hear rustling over the breeze. It sounded like it was moving towards me. I pointed my rifle in that direction. If you aren't familiar with guns, a typical SKS has a 10-round fixed magazine. That means I would have 10 shots to defend myself before I'd have to reach for my pistol if something were to happen. But then the rustling stopped. I still couldn't see anything. I was about halfway between the porch and tree line. Time felt as if it had stopped, and I felt as if I'd been standing there for hours. I turned and ran, hearing something burst from the undergrowth behind me. I reached the back door and threw the door open, struggling to catch my breath, likely due to years of smoking. Wanda had awakened, and W shift started soon. I told them about what happened, and they told me to go lie down for a bit, that when I woke up we could all sit up until sunrise, so I lay down on the couch, managing to somehow doze off. I woke up not long after by W shaking me. "We have to go now," he said in a panicked tone. He went outside over half an hour ago, and he hasn't come back yet. I was still half asleep, so it took me a moment to let that sink in. A is gone, I asked, trying to make sense of what I was hearing. I sat up, asking W to explain things. We heard the cows outside acting agitated again, but then they started to sound like they were afraid. Then some of them managed to trample through the fence. They went to see what scared them, and told me if he wasn't back in 10 minutes to call the cops. By then I was lacing up my boots. To heck with that, W began to say. A's our brother. We can't just leave him out there. We're gonna go out there and find him. I agreed without hesitation. We grabbed guns, my backpack full of extra ammo, and W grabbed a machete. We walked out the door and locked it behind us. I could see the spot in the fence where the cows had broken through. We crossed the road and walked into the pasture. This pasture is huge. Part of it is just grass. It also has a small pond, but most of it is forest, flat forest, the kind with not much undergrowth, and where the trees are spaced out more. A great place for cattle, and a great place to hunt as well. If I had to guess, I would say it was at least 200 acres. W used to hunt on this farmer's land as well. He was leading the way when we heard a long string of rapid gunshots, followed by a short pause, then 9 more shots. It was clearly A emptying his rifle, grabbing his pistol, and emptying it as well. We sprinted in that direction, Even though it sounded far off, we reached the wooden part of the property and started to call for A. We kept making our way in the direction. We heard the shots. Panic began to set in with each passing moment. W was losing his cool, and I wasn't far behind. Then W just took off sprinting. He yelled, "There! That's got to be him." I gave chase, but I was having trouble keeping up. "Yo, slow down," I yelled, trying to get W to listen to me. "We need to stick together here," but he didn't listen. His light was bobbing back and forth as he ran, and I continued to follow. I slipped in a mud puddle at one point. At least I hoped it was just mud, and I ate the ground. I looked up and started trying to regain my bearings, but when I did, I saw this silhouette standing about 50 feet away. It looked like a big German Shepherd-type dog standing on its back legs. Its ears were up, and I could see its muzzle as it was looking in a different direction. I looked down and I saw that it didn't have typical front legs. Instead, it had what looked to be arms with hands and fingers tipped with claws. It seemed to be covered in gray matted fur, but what stood out the most to me were the piercing yellow eyes. I saw it take off running in the direction W was going. I stood up as quickly as I could, giving chase in the same direction. If W was in danger, I had to do something to try to help. I ran and ran, starting to hear more gunshots, and eventually I saw W's light in the distance. He stopped shooting, and I saw the light pointing at the ground like he was reloading. I caught up and asked him if he saw it. I looked over and noticed it was on the ground, his back against a tree. I started to panic, asking if he was okay. "He's breathing, just unconscious," W explained. "We've got to get him home." We both picked him up and slung one arm around our shoulders. We began to make our way back to the house, but we knew we were being watched, and even worse followed. We could hear it moving when we moved, stopping when we stopped. I drew my pistol with my free hand and switched on the light attached to it. My eye stung as sweat made its way inside. W and I were both out of breath, and we still had quite a long way back to go. After walking for about 20 minutes, I finally woke up. We stopped and asked him to explain what happened, but we were cut off by the sound of a branch snapping. W and I both trained our lights in that direction and saw the now familiar flash of gray just at the edge of the light. I turned in that direction and fired off 3 shots. We heard a growl and the sound of something big running away. We took that opportunity and booked it. If I had kept track of time and direction as well as I thought, we should be breaking through the trees in about 10 minutes. Then we should be able to see the light from the house. We ran through the pasture and made it to the fence. We crossed the street. I asked A to unlock the door to the house, and he frantically searched his pockets for the key, but couldn't find it. He began to panic. W calmed him down and suggested he try a window. A, being the smallest of us, agreed. We went to the back of the house and managed to remove the AC from a window, which I then climbed through. He let us in, and the rest of the night was uneventful. I'm sorry for the anticlimactic ending to the actual story, but I do have more to say. The next day, we talked to the owner of the pasture where this happened. He found 3 of his cows dead and partially eaten. He also found a blood trail in the wooded area that led towards the house, then the opposite direction to the edge of his property. He also found A's keys in the ground where he had been knocked out and where we'd found him. The farmer explained that blood trail led to the land owned by an old hermit who lived in a trailer in the woods. He apparently never leaves and has relatives bringing him food. It's rumored that he messed with the occult in his younger days. We told the farmer what we experienced, but he didn't believe us, thinking we instead encountered a pack of rabid coyotes or feral dogs. None of us agree with that. So what could it have been? Was it a wolf-like cryptid? Was it a werewolf? A still lives in the same house, but he hasn't seen or heard anything like it since. Once again, sorry for the anticlimactic ending. Story number 2. 1998, this happened when I was on a family road trip from Iowa to Texas. It was me, my grandpa, my aunts Sam and Ash, and my Uncle Lee. This was when they were all teens, and I was living with my grandpa. We took my grandpa's truck. The back had a top, and we put a mattress in the back for the trip. I was in the back of the truck pretty much the whole time, talking to the others through the little window. At night, my aunts slept in the back with me while Lee and Grandpa slept in the front. Grandpa would drive until really late, and sometimes Lee would drive to give Grandpa a break. I'm not sure which state we were in at the time, but it was getting dark and it was raining. I felt like I was in some horror story or something. So we were at a gas station or truck stop, and I stayed in the truck. I think I was reading or writing at the time. I had a flashlight, so I could see what I was doing. This was before I ever had anything like a phone or a DS, and at the time my Game Boy was dead. I looked up, my neck was really stiff. I tried to pop it to make it feel better. You know how you turn your head enough to make it go pop? Well, that's what I did, and when I did, I looked out the window and saw something. I don't know what it was. It was dark, stormy, and it was like across a parking lot and a road. At first I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me because I was tired. Then I got an uneasy feeling, and I tried to ignore it. My family came back out, passing through the window a drink and snacks. I didn't think about saying anything. Like I said, I thought it was just my mind playing tricks on me in the dark. I ate my snacks and eventually went to sleep. We were on the road for 3 or 4 days there and 3 or 4 days back. There were a lot of storms. I wasn't sure what state we were in, but I saw it a lot at night. It was like it was following the truck. To make it creepier, I didn't see it when we were in a town or city, just on the dark back roads. I never knew for sure if my mind was playing tricks on me, or if something really did follow us. What I remember of it was that it was big, like a little bigger than a man in height, but wide, really wide. I'm 4'11.5" and it was wider than I am tall. I never got a better look at it. It never came close enough for me to make out more details. It always kept pace with the truck too, no matter how fast we were going. It was kind of hunched over, and I think it ran on 2 legs. It didn't seem to have that movement that, say, a dog would have while running. It looked like maybe it had long, shaggy fur or hair on it. If anyone has any ideas of what this might have been, let me know. Or maybe it really was just my mind playing vivid tricks on me. Story number 3. Part 1. Before I begin, this story is from the perspective of my friend Harold, and for the sake of anonymity, I'll keep details as vague as possible along with not using his name or the names of the people involved. I believe I saw a cryptid that most people would know as a dogman or wolfman of the sort in the New Jersey Pine Barrens. Let me begin. When I received my license at 17 years old, I started spending all my free time outdoors, hiking all over the East Coast, but mostly within the New Jersey Pine Barrens since I live in New Jersey. I would later graduate Stockton University with a bachelor's degree in environmental science. I worked as a naturalist at Batstow Village in Warden State Forest for a while, which is the biggest state forest within the New Jersey Pine Barrens. I got the job before my internship ended, due to my knowledge of plants and animals. When I first applied, I hadn't even finished my first semester in college, so they didn't expect me to have the credentials. I only give out this information because when I see an animal in the woods, day or night, I know with 100% certainty what I'm looking at. And after almost 6 years from the time of writing this story, I can't wrap my head around the creature that I saw. I'm an open-minded person to a point. I do believe certain cryptids can exist solely if the biology of the creature is possible. But that doesn't put a bipedal canine on my list. Roughly about 6 years ago, I, along with 2 of my friends, one a welder and one a mechanic, I'll be calling Chris and Alan respectively, went off-roading in Alan's truck somewhere in Manchester, New Jersey. We met with a bunch of Alan's off-roading buddies in a spot they frequented. I do not know the specific area, only that it was in Manchester, New Jersey, and was very close to the general vicinity of the abandoned brick factory. We hung out for a few hours, drove around the dirt trails, and just had a good time socializing with other people. I didn't have any substances in my system, because after we left I had to drive myself home. So I was sober, along with Alan, who was also sober. But to be honest, Chris was a bit high. We were starting to leave, and as we were taking the trails to get back to the main road, Alan told me to help look out for deer. He was driving only 35 miles per hour because the dirt path we were on was pretty open, about 30-ish feet wide, and we were dead in the middle in case he did have to respond to a deer jumping out of nowhere. A few minutes go by, and my sharp eyes spot a deer running alongside the truck, but within the tree-line, so the view of it wasn't more than a dark brown patch of fur. As I'm about to say something to my friend Alan, thinking that this is a deer about to run in front of the car, the animal speeds up its pace significantly and gets about 20 feet ahead of the truck still in the tree-line. Then it proceeds to jump out in front of the truck. For as long as I live, I'll never forget what I saw that night. It ran on its 2 back legs, looked right up at us, and to our horror, it ran across this 30-foot wide dirt road in 2 to 3 steps, then went into the opposite tree-line. In those few seconds, I saw this dogman or wolfman. It was roughly 7 feet tall, estimating its height using Alan's lifted truck as a reference. It was covered in dark brown fur. Every inch of its body was covered, but the chest and stomach area had less fur, and a lighter colored fur than the rest of the body. But even under all this fur, you could make out extreme muscle definition. Very similar to an Olympic bodybuilder. It also had a canine type of head with a long snout and two distinct perked-up wolf ears and large muscular legs. The torso and arms were similar to that of a very muscular man with large hands. These hands had visible claws that looked like they could do some real damage, and its eyes reflected an unnatural color of light that I haven't seen in the animal kingdom. As soon as it jumped into the opposing tree, my friend Alan slammed on the brakes, and Chris said, "I know I'm high, but what the actual heck was that?" My friends, puzzled by what we just saw, looked at me and went, "Okay, nature boy, please tell us that was something explainable." I sat there dumbfounded, telling them I didn't have an answer, not one based in reason or science, nothing I could logically think of, and my friend Alan hightailed it out of there. To this day, my friend Chris has convinced himself that it wasn't a hallucination because of the pod, and my other friend Alan, who doesn't believe in the supernatural and absolutely refuses to have an open mind, doesn't speak about this event, pretending it never happened. To this day, I still have no logical explanation for what I saw. I do not believe that a bipedal canine creature could logically, biologically exist, but what I saw was something matching that description with my own eyes, and it was very real. Story number 4. Part 2. My name is George, and I believe I had a similar encounter to Harold's. It was close to where his first encounter was, which was near the abandoned brick factory in Manchester. To start off, my brother has taken me to this place before with Harold, and I thought it was pretty cool, so I decided to go back there with a group of friends one night. To my horror, we encountered something that I never thought could be real. Like I stated above, my friends and I came back to the abandoned brick factory to explore it shortly after my brother took me with his friend Harold. He warned us never to come back there at night, but we didn't heed Harold's warning. We were told by Harold that he had some other experiences there that haunted him for a long time, but we thought he was joking around or exaggerating. Anyway, on to the story. As soon as we got there, we felt as if we were being watched, as if there was some kind of eerie presence about the place. My friends and I were a little spooked early on, and as our eyes darted all around the woodline, I spotted something. In the woodline up ahead, I saw something that shouldn't be possible. It was what looked to be, well, a werewolf. Its piercing yellow eyes were staring into my soul, it felt like, and it gave me the creeps when I was looking at it. It was abnormally tall, maybe 9 or 10 feet. It had large wolf-like or dog-like perked ears and a long snout. Its body was similar to a bodybuilder, with large muscles that were visible through its fur. But its head was similar to a German shepherd or a wolf, and its hands ended in claw-like digits. I blinked to make sure that it wasn't my imagination. To my terror, my friends reacted to this thing as well. They were startled. To me, it felt like it was beckoning me to come closer, and its stare was so quiet yet soul-piercing. I felt like a deer in the headlights. The way it looked also reminded me of an Egyptian jackal, except this could not be real. It didn't do anything but stare at us and make us feel intimidated. But when it walked away, we ran out of the area. To this day, I'm still not exactly sure what we saw, but when my brother showed me an illustration of a dogman, it made me shudder. Whatever I saw that night looked just like the illustration my brother showed me. To this day, I'm still in disbelief about it. I'll never go back there. The entire time I thought my life was in danger. Maybe the way it stared at us was a warning to never come back. That brings us to the end of this episode. Good night. Be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Thank you.